Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks, and welcome to another fun-filled, action-packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host, meteorologist DT here from Weather Risk, your captain of chaos, your colonel of confusion, your commander of catastrophe. Let's talk about this week in weather. I mean, a lot of issues here. First, my final winter forecast, November 22nd. Comes out. It's a mild, wet, stormy pattern for the Midwest. There's no doubt about it. To some degree, the upper plains as well. And mild for the eastern U.S. For the next 2 weeks. There's no doubt about that. So I don't want to overlook that. Everyone's talking about December, and that has a lot of promise. But, you know, if you keep talking about that and you ignore what's going on now for the next 2 or 3 weeks, people are going to say, well, you've got a bias. You're hyping it and you're ignoring what's going on now. And why is it so warm now? And aren't you worried? And so let's talk about the next 2 weeks because we don't want to forget about that. Oh, my goodness, I made a horrible another one of my wonderful spelling. Okay. La Nina to fade by late December, no doubt about it. The data continues to show that. We have, of course, the sudden stratospheric warming event and the MJO going into phase 8 in December. So let's get right into this. Now, some of you may be wondering, DT, am I a sick, twisted weather freaks? And the answer is, if you're watching this video, you are, in fact, a sick, twisted weather freak. Okay, so here is the website here, and there's, of course, our shop page, and you can get our snow removal forecast. A lot of people signing up fast because it's looking really ominous, really looking impressive here in December. You can also, this here is the Weather Risk Grains Twitter page for the grain clients. Here's the Blue Sky page as well. And then, of course, you can also get the Mid-Atlantic forecast for only $35 a month. Really useful product here going into the winter months here. We break up Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, 12 zones with maps and the week 2 forecast and temperatures and winds and precipitation, and it's a really great forecast product. Only $35 a month. It probably, it gives you, if you're just looking for basic winter coverage, this is the product for you. All right, this here is the sea surface temperature map here, and I wanted to point out a couple things here. Obviously, there's our cold pool. A lot of people talking about this. They saw we were quite warm in the Gulf of Alaska back in early October. Now we've cooled off here in November over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and you can clearly see that. But I think this is temporary. We'll see. And of course, the Central Pacific, all the way from California to Japan, because of China, is still incredibly warm. So this has not yet been decided about how the Northern Pacific is going to shape up. So we also have the negative IOD here in the Indian Ocean. You can see how cold it is in the western half of the Indian Ocean. And there's a La Nina doing, and it looks pretty impressive right now. And it definitely is La Nina. There's no doubt about it. It's La Nina. And here's the latest graph to show you where we're at. And you can see, oops, let me bring this forward. Let me copy this first and bring it forward so we can see it. There's La Nina. You can see the general trend here, but notice it's kind of bounced up a little bit here, reaching almost 0.9 centigrade, and now it's bounced up a little bit here to around 0.8. The latest CFS continues to show this thing is on the verge of collapse. Look at the sharp cutoff here in December. So once you get in December, this thing just takes off. By January, we're in neutral. So this is a pretty rapid rise over 1 month. We'll see if it happens, but that's what it's showing. And even like hints of a weak El Nino come by June or July of the summer next year. Well, I don't know about that, but we can definitely see this thing is going to break down fast. Now, this is the sudden stratospheric warming. Wrong. Let me change that. Sudden stratospheric warming event. And you can see here from the European model, you can see the winds collapsing now down to here. And this, of course, is the zero line. So we reach it really kicks in around going into Thanksgiving week, okay, and then it begins to go back towards neutral, but it's still well below the mean all the way through December. So this is a pretty big sudden stratospheric warming event. Now, what does that exactly mean? There's a huge bubble of warm air, which is developing in the Arctic region. Because the winds here are collapsing, the warm air gets up from the tropics into the Arctic. When the winds are very strong, when these blue lines are way, way up here, okay, that doesn't happen. But because it's so weak, the bubble of warm air comes up from the Pacific, from the Atlantic, and you get the sudden stratospheric warming. Let me show you what this looks like, okay? These are the temperatures at the very top of the atmosphere, 50 millibars, almost at the edge of outer space, all right? Now you can see this is as a valid, this is from a couple of days ago, November 9th. The little bubble of warm air here, here's the cold air. That's really normal looking. That's not a big deal. You see the warm air over North America, and then you can see the cold air in Europe and Russia and Siberia and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the beginning of it. Now, this is what happens over the next week or so. This takes us to November 19th, 20th. Look at the huge explosion of warm air right here, building in the Pacific into Alaska, into the western half of the Arctic region, and then it becomes massive by November 23, 24. Incredibly warm temperatures. Look at the top of the scale. This is very unusual. This is not what normally happens, but normal has a variance to it. Normal has the end of the bell curve. And you do get unusual events here. So, and that's part of the natural cycle. It doesn't mean anybody's messing with the weather. This is sudden stratospheric warming events. We've had them for thousands of years, and we will continue to have them. There's that bubble of warm air, and this is what it looks like here by the time we get to November 27th. Look at this baby. The entire Arctic now is incredibly warm relative to normal, and now what this means is that the polar vortex gets displaced or split in half, and now we're off to the races. And this is November 27th, going Thanksgiving Day here in America, the end of November for everybody else, or as Rocky said, hey, for me, it's Thursday. So there you go. It's looking really, really impressive with the sudden stratospheric warming event. And here's a kicker. You normally don't get those in November. Most of them, the vast majority of them, have come in January, February, March. So does that mean that we're going to get another one later on because we're happening early one now? Possibly, but we don't know. It's just really unusual to have one at the end of November like this. All right, let's talk about the Matthian-Julian oscillation, the MJO. This is from a couple of days ago, and you can see that the European model here is definitely moving. Look at the slow movement here in phase 6. Doodle, 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 just doodling around here, phase 7, and then finally in the first week of December, we get into phase 8. This GFS extended implies the same thing. It goes to December. It's a little slower because, again, look at the loop here. But again, by the mid-December, it hints that it's going into phase 8. Now, the CFS does not do that. The CFS is much, much slower and keeps into phase 7, and it's also a lot weaker. So as a result, the CFS model runs in the extended forecast aren't very good. Or, well, let me refine that. It's not like as bullish as the GFS or the European. So that's what I really mean to say. Now, it's not to say that the CFS is going to be wrong here, but I don't think it's better than the European extended or the GFS extended. So I'm sticking with those two models for the time being. Now, this is what phase 6 looks like here. Phase 7. As we go into phase 7 here in the mid and late November. It's a blowtorch. As you can see, there's no mean troughiness anywhere. Strong ridging in Canada. There's no supply of cold air anywhere getting into the United States. This just isn't. This sort of map here, there's no pathway here. There's no way to get the cold air. All the cold air is blocked up by the ridge here, and there's just no way to get it into the continental U.S. whether West Coast, middle section, the East Coast. It just doesn't happen. Now, and we can see how that's reflected in our teleconnections. So again, our Pacific teleconnections, the two of them are the EPO, the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, and the PNA. And of course, the Atlantic teleconnections, the Arctic Oscillation, and the O. So, all these phases have positive phases, neutral phases, and negative phases, as we know. And of course, they can be also enhanced and changed by the Matthian-Julian oscillation. So, as we look at these, here's the Pacific side. Here's the EPO and the PNA. And you can see they're neutral. They're pretty much neutral. They have been neutral. If you look at the black dots bouncing around here, a little positive, a little negative, a little positive, a little negative, and the same thing bounces around here. And the PNA, same thing. Slightly positive, then slightly negative, then positive, and slightly negative, and neutral. Right, all the way through. I mean, when you get into after November 15th, it's kind of negative on the PNA a little bit, as you can see. Now, on the Atlantic side, let's look at the Atlantic side. Here's the Arctic Oscillation. It's been negative, as we know, okay, and it stays negative, and it goes, and then it hits positive, neutral. Well, by mid-November, okay, and then the NAO, which has been strongly negative, as we know, goes towards neutral also by the time we get to November 23rd, 24, 25. Now you look at that, and you go, well, none of that's particularly favorable as we go heading towards December, and you're right, it isn't. Now, presumably, that's going to change as we go into late November, December, but as you can see, these projections don't go that far. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on right now. So this is the current map from Wednesday, November 12th, a couple of days ago, yesterday actually. And there's look at that mean trough here. Now that's the big player right here. This is the upper low, the trough that brought the extreme cold and the snow showers over the last couple of days to the Great Lakes, the Northeast, and New England. That is now moving off the coast here. The block is still there, but as you can see, the ridges on the west coast of North America are still getting somewhat cooler air entering in the central and eastern U.S. But this trough is going to be a player. And as it advances to the west coast here, it splits into two pieces for this Friday. And the ridge, of course, on the Rockies now over the plains in the Midwest, and the trough here is leaving. So this is a lot of warm air that's headed eastward, and the trough is on the west coast. So even though you have a nice block here, you're still going to get a lot of warming as this trough advances eastward and the ridge advances eastward. Let me show you what I mean. So this is now for Saturday night, Sunday. And we have this weak little system right here. The upper lows over the southwestern states. Remember, they split apart. So this little short wave causes low pressure here north of the Great Lakes. And then the ridge is flat and broad. We have high pressure to the south, mild temperatures. Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, southern states, central plains, a lot of 70s this weekend. It's going to be a spectacular weekend. Go out and enjoy it while you can, both Saturday and Sunday. Okay? It's November. I know a lot of folks are going, oh, can I get snow in November? Stop. It's not going to happen. It very rarely happens. It's November. That's not what November's about. November is about, well, football, but also it is about watching the cold air build up in Canada. That's what's important, not whether or not you can get a couple of snow showers in Kentucky or Pennsylvania or Illinois, or that's not what the November's about. All right, so this is now the other thing is now, okay, so that takes us into this Friday, and again, like I said, this takes the Saturday, Sunday. But here comes this upper low. Once this system, there's another one behind it. See this trough here? So these two features are going to be a big deal. So here we go. That trough really amplifies as it drops southward, and it kicks the upper low eastward into the Rockies and the plains. Bada boom, bada bing. So there's the first low coming east, surface low right here, and there it is. And there's the main trough, the big player right here. The block is still there in Greenland and northern Canada. But we are in phase 7, and that is not good if you want any kind of cold weather in the central and eastern U.S. There's the upper level trough. It's now leaving. Okay, still bringing the snow to Maine and rain and snow to the southeast Canadian provinces. It's a big system. It's cold, and you're getting some cold air here coming in behind it. This is for Monday. So we get a little bit of a shot of cold air, but with this front moving through, the little high coming down, bringing back seasonal temperatures to the Midwest and the East Coast and to the upper South. But this is going to be a rainmaker here for the central plains and the Midwest, and then the big one coming in behind it. So here's the advance of the system, bringing rain, needed rain, mind you, for the central and upper plains, also known as the Western Corn Belt, and then the rain advances into the Ohio Valley as well. But here comes the next system coming out of the Rockies. This is going to be a doozy, going to drop a ton of snow in the Great Basin and the Rocky areas. This is now Tuesday, Monday night, November 17th, to Tuesday, November 18th. Okay. Now, the system for November 20th, the next impulse comes down. We talked about this energy here, all right? So this one kicks out, and then this one comes in behind it. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. And this is now November 19th and 20th. So look at the ridge developing over the eastern United States. As this system advances eastward, the ridge comes in, then another one comes in behind it. So we end up getting a lot of ridging over the central and eastern U.S. And here we go. This is Wednesday, November 19th. All right, the low is now ejected eastward, getting some rain again in the central plains into the Midwest. But look at the ridge developing over the eastern United States. There's a lot of warm air coming up here with this pattern. And as energy keeps dropping down from Alaska into the west coast and the Rockies. And again, you might look at this, you might get discouraged. Don't. It's November. It doesn't mean anything. This is November 21 to November 26th. So here we have this trough over the Rockies into the plain states, the ridge across the eastern U.S., even though we have a lot of blocking, still a negative NAO in Greenland and northeastern Canada, it's still getting that ridge. As long as you keep getting this troughiness here on the west coast and the Rockies, you get a ridge here despite the blocking. All the blocking does is keep the ridge under control. It keeps it flat. That's all it does. All right? So now this is November 2021. And there's the another big rain event coming out of the Delta. The models have been jumping on this one for a while. A very mild to the east, no doubt about that. East of the system, it roars up towards Chicago and Minnesota. A lot of warm air ahead of it. This is a rainstorm for the Midwest. Much needed rain for the Midwest, and eventually the East Coast. So that's November 21, 22. Now here's the next one. The next energy coming out of southwestern states. Here's another trough dropping down from Alaska into southwest Canada, dropping heavy snow there, and then pulling and bringing more energy into the Midwest and rainstorms. So this big short wave, here we go, November 22, 23, there's another one. Boom, wars up into the Midwest again, pulling up the mild air up and down the East Coast. A lot of rain for the Midwest, the Great Lakes area. And again, you can see the strength of this ridge here over the East Coast. Looks pretty impressive. Now, the good news here is that this is the European ensemble, and it's not quite as amplified with the ridge on the West Coast, but it's still the same general idea. You can see one big trough here moving through the Midwest, and there's the next one coming in behind it. The block is still there, and the ridge is there. It's not quite as strong, but it's still very impressive. And it is. It just is. So this takes us all the way to the beginning of Thanksgiving weekend. Now, I wanted to talk about the difference between Phase 7 and Phase 8. So we talked about Phase 7, which of course is a blowtorch. But if we do in fact go into Phase 8, like the MJO models are showing, what does that mean? Well, this is Phase 8 in December with La Nina. And it's pretty impressive. You can see where there's a tremendous amount of high latitude blocking in the Arctic regions. We have a Greenland block here, and we have a big negative anomaly off the New England coast, off the Northeast coast, which implies potentially winter storms. So that's what December looks like with Phase 8 in La Nina. Now, if La Nina breaks down and we are in Phase 8 in December, or even in Phase 1, we get a totally different pattern. We get this. Woof. Monster block in Greenland. Okay. Strong negative anomalies across the Atlantic, all the way to the mid-Atlantic and the Ohio Valley. And a huge ridge on the West Coast. This is a snowstorm pattern for December. If we're in neutral. We don't know if we're going to be neutral. We don't know how fast La Nina is going to break down. It's possible maybe the CFS is wrong. Maybe La Nina lasts a whole bloody month. I don't know. But if that happens, this is Phase 8, neutral. This is Phase 8 La Nina. You can see the difference. Now, Phase 8 La Nina is still pretty good. Nothing wrong with that, but this is really impressive. All right. Now let's go into Turkey weekend, into the first week of December. This is where the change starts. Now, you look at the European here, the operational European, okay, at 300 hours out, you go, what the hell? Look at the monster ridge here. The European model's lost it. This is bullshit. It's not even close to being real. Okay, so just ignore this. This is wrong. Let's go over here. This is the European ensemble. Look at the difference between the operational run and the ensemble. Holy cow. Okay, here we have the ridge over the eastern United States. The beginning to weekend is being shoved out to the east, into the Atlantic Ocean. The mean trough now moves from the Rockies to the plains in the Midwest. We have the high latitude blocking here, and we're getting a nice ridge forming on the west coast of North America, and we're starting getting cross-polar flow developing from Siberia across the North Pole into the southern Canada area. This is the GFS here in the upper left. You can see the operational. This is the GFS right here. Excuse me. This is the 0Z run, and this is the 6Z run. So the 0Z run still has the mean trough over the Rockies, bit of a ridge over the south of the United States, but we're getting a cross-polar flow, building the cold air in Canada. Very nice, but the ridge is way out here in the eastern Pacific, Alaska. Now, when we get to the 6Z run, the ridge is a little further east, okay, and the ridge in Alaska, it is, the Pacific, and the ridge over the eastern United States is much flatter. You see how flatter it is, how weaker? And now you have the negative anomaly expanding into the Midwest, sliding towards the Great Lakes. And look at the strong howling cross-polar flow coming out of the Arctic region into Canada. This is impressive. This is Saturday, November 28th, and Sunday, November 20th. Yeah, this is 28th. This is the 28th of November. So you can see this is a big shift from 0 to 6Z. I hope it's right, but this the 6Z GFS ensemble, and you can see the change occurring very nicely here. Now, what this does is, and the other point here is, let's talk about the cold air built up in Canada. And this is really, really important. And a lot of weather hobbyists, a lot of weather nerds, a lot of weather perverts, they don't look at the buildup of cold air in Canada in November. And I cannot emphasize how important that is. So let's talk about that. Here's the these are 850 temperatures, all right? So the black line is -10, and the yellow line is a zero line at 850. Now, remember, the zero line at 850 is what you need for snow at the basic minimum. This is 1 mile above the ground. Your atmosphere has to be below zero. And then, of course, the other thing is the buildup of cold air. How much cold air is in reserve in Canada so that when you get a winter storm, it can pull the cold air in. That's why Canada is important, right? So let's talk about that. This is now on the image on the left. This is valid here, November 13, 15. This weekend. And you can see the black line -10. It's way to the north. The zero line, which is this area where the purple and the gray meet. I didn't highlight it in yellow this image. You can see it's mostly north of the U.S.-Canada border. Now, this is November 17th. We get a little bit of shot of cold air coming in. You can see right in this pocket here, the main cold air supply. But we are getting an advancement of cold air. You can see the zero line advancing here. Coming out of the weekend, we do get a shot of cold air. And then the storms come out of the western United States, and we stay mild over the eastern and central U.S. You can see the zero line stays to the north. This is November 22nd, okay? But look at the buildup of the -10 air in here. And then finally, as we go towards November 27th, going into Thanksgiving weekend, look at the explosion of -10 air built up in Canada when we get the cross-polar flow. Remember how we talked about it here? That's what happens here. And you can see the 0850 line plunges south into Virginia, into Missouri, into Kansas, and the -10 850 is now pushing into the northern United States, into North Dakota and Minnesota. And you can see the explosion and advancement of it here. That's the cross-polar flow. That's at the end of November, Thanksgiving weekend. That's the transition. That's when things begin to happen. Not until then. You can see the EPO as well. Here's the GFS ensemble. Let me bring this forward. There you go. And you can see it. This is the EPO, Eastern Pacific Oscillation. You're looking for your Alaskan cross-polar flow when it goes negative. And you can see as we go into late November, look at all the negative colors here, the blues, the dark blues, the greens, the negative colors, increasing over many of these things as we go into December. The Europeans showing the same thing. Again, we're positive here for the next week or so. It's November 21st, 22nd, right in here. That's the next, 10 days. And then you go beyond that, you can see it clearly going negative here in early December with a strong signal for that. As we go beyond this, here's the European ensemble. This is now week 3, week 4. This is December 1, December 30, December 1. Now we have direct cross-polar flow. The mean trough is moving into the Midwest. The ridge over the southeastern states is now way out here. Remember, at one point this ridge is here. Look how strong it is. Now look at the difference. It definitely gets suppressed as this comes eastward, no doubt about it. And this is moving eastward. And by the time we get to December 4 and 5, we have a strong negative anomaly over the upper Midwest. The ridge is flat here. This is something. This is an Arctic outbreak, and no doubt about it. Whether there's a winter storm there, I don't know. Probably is to some capacity. All right. It doesn't look particularly great for the East Coast, but more like a Midwest winter storm. But this is a lot of cold air coming south. No doubt about it. And then finally, on my last slide here, this is December 10, 11, excuse me, not November, December 9, 10, 11. Negatively tilted trough on the East Coast. The anomaly is here. The block is in Canada. The ridge is on the West Coast. This looks like an early December snowstorm. But again, after December 5, maybe December 9, December 10, we'll see. But the pattern kind of looks that way. So that's the presentation. I hope you learned a lot here. I hope you understood what's going on here. I think this is looking promising, but don't overlook the next 2 weeks of November. Don't freak out over it if you're a cold winter weather lover. The only thing that's important here is getting the cold air buildup in Canada. And again, the other issue is, if you haven't paid attention to it, there's a drought here in the Ohio Valley to less and the upper Mississippi Valley, but mostly the Ohio Valley, and they really need these rains here. So these rains are going to be a big deal for them. So let's hope those rains show up as forecasted. All right, this is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I will see you over on the Weather Risk's Facebook page, the website, and on the social media.